The girl in the back of his car wasn't breathing, and Vladmír Cervenák, king of the Eastern Bloodline, had absolutely no idea how she'd gotten there. He'd noticed her scent, first warm honey and lavender, utterly human, cutting through the leather and old parchment smell of his 1967 Mercedes as he slid into the driver's seat after the council meeting. One glance in the rearview mirror confirmed what his ancient senses already knew. A young woman, 20 at most, curled on her side across the back seat like a cat, dark hair spilling over her face, chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm of deep sleep. Vladmír sat perfectly still, his pale fingers frozen on the steering wheel. 300 years of existence, 2 centuries as king, and he'd never encountered something so bewildering. His car had been locked, warded, protected by blood magic old enough to make modern vampires weep. Yet here she was, sleeping as peacefully as if she'd chosen his vehicle specifically for an afternoon nap. He could wake her, demand answers, compel the truth from her with nothing more than a glance. His silver eyes held power enough to break most mortal minds. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was the way her hand curled beneath her cheek, vulnerable and trusting. Perhaps it was the faint scent of tears he detected, dried salt on her skin. Or perhaps, after so many years of calculated politics and ancient games, he simply wanted to understand this mystery before shattering it. Vladmír started the car. The engine purred to life, smooth and quiet, but the girl didn't stir. He pulled out of the underground garage beneath the Court of Thorns, the sprawling estate that served as his primary residence in the modern world, and drove into the night. The city lights of Prague blurred past, gold and amber against the darkness. He took a left, then another, following no particular route. Just driving. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on him. The vampire king, ruler of 7 territories, keeper of the old laws, driving in circles through the city streets because a human girl had fallen asleep in his car and he didn't quite know what to do about it. His phone buzzed. Lucian, his second in command, the text undoubtedly asking where he'd disappeared to after the meeting. Vladmír ignored it. Let them wonder. Let the council fret. For the first time in decades, he wanted a moment that belonged to no one but himself. Except, of course, it also belonged to the sleeping stranger in his back seat. He turned down a quieter street, away from the tourist districts, into the older parts of the city where cobblestones still lined the roads and gas lamps flickered beside modern streetlights. The girl shifted, murmuring something too soft for even his sharp hearing to catch. Her face turned toward the window, and in the passing light, he finally got a clear look at her. Beautiful, in that ephemeral way humans often were. Delicate bone structure, full lips slightly parted, thick lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. But more than that, there was something haunted in her features, even in sleep, a tension that suggested her rest wasn't entirely peaceful. Vladmír found himself wondering what she was dreaming about. What series of events had led her to break into a vampire king's car and fall asleep, as if she had nowhere else in the world to go? His fingers tightened on the wheel. He should wake her. This had gone on long enough, but he didn't. Instead, he drove on through the winding streets, past the Vltava River where moonlight turned the water to silver, past the castle district where human tourists stumbled drunkenly between bars, ignorant of the fact that several of those establishments were owned by his kind. The night deepened around them, and still the girl slept, and still Vladmír drove, caught in a strange spell he couldn't quite name. It was nearly 2 a.m. when she finally stirred. He heard the change in her breathing first, the way it hitched and quickened as consciousness returned. Then, a small, confused sound, not quite words, followed by the rustle of fabric as she sat up. Vladmir's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. For a moment they simply stared at each other. Her eyes were dark, brown, or perhaps deep hazel, wide with shock and something else. Fear, yes, but also resignation, as if waking up in a stranger's car was terrible, but not entirely unexpected. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered, and her voice was rough, like she'd been crying for hours before sleep claimed her. Vladmír pulled the car smoothly to the side of the road and turned to face her properly, draping one arm over the seat. In the dim interior light, his appearance was striking bone-white hair that fell to his shoulders, skin so pale it seemed to glow, features sharp and aristocratic, and those silver eyes that marked him as old blood, ancient power. He was wearing a black suit, perfectly tailored with a crimson silk shirt beneath, every inch the vampire lord he was. "I have no intention of hurting you," he said, and his accent carried the weight of centuries, a blend of old Czech and something older still. "Though I confess I'm curious how you managed to break into my car, and why you chose it as your sleeping quarters." She blinked at him, and he watched her process his appearance. Most humans recoiled at this point, instinct screaming at them to run from a predator. But she just sat there, taking him in with those haunted eyes. "I didn't break in," she said finally. "The door was unlocked." "Impossible. I'm just telling you what happened." She wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive gesture. I needed somewhere safe, somewhere to hide. I saw your car and tried the handle and it opened, so I got in. I thought I'd just rest for a minute, but I guess I fell asleep. I'm sorry. I'll go." She reached for the door handle, but Vladmír spoke before she could pull it. "Hide from what?" Her hand froze. For a long moment she didn't answer, and he thought she might bolt anyway. Then her shoulders sagged, all the fight draining out of her. "From men who want to hurt me. From a life that's falling apart. From myself, maybe." She laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Take your pick." Vladmír studied her, really looked at her, and saw the signs he'd missed before. The bruise on her wrist, fading but still visible. The way she held herself, like someone waiting for the next blow. The exhaustion that went deeper than mere sleeplessness. Something stirred in his chest, an emotion he'd thought long dead. Protective anger, the kind that made him want to find whoever had put that bruise on her skin and teach them exactly what happened to those who harmed the vulnerable. "Your name," he said, making it less than a command but more than a request. She hesitated, then apparently decided it didn't matter anymore. "Diana Novak." Diana. He tasted the name, found it suited her. "I am Vladmír Cervenák, and I suspect you have nowhere to go tonight." It wasn't a question. She looked away, confirming it. "The car door should not have opened for you," he continued, his mind working through the implications. "My wards are absolute, which means either you possess magic you're unaware of, or something else is at play here." He paused, then made a decision that would have shocked his entire court. "Either way, you need somewhere safe. I can provide that." Diana's eyes snapped back to his, suspicious and desperate in equal measure. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "No," Vladmír agreed. "But you managed to do something no other creature in this city could do. That makes you interesting, and I find I would very much like to know why." It was the truth, if not the whole truth. He didn't mention the way something in him had shifted the moment he'd seen her sleeping in his car, so vulnerable and yet somehow trusting enough to rest there. Didn't mention that in 300 years, nothing had intrigued him quite like this strange, broken human girl who'd stumbled into his life. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked again, and this time he heard the real question beneath it. "Can I trust you?" "No," he said simply. "You have my word, Diana Novak, and I do not give my word lightly." She searched his face, looking for the lie, for the trap. Vladmír let her look. He had nothing to hide in this moment, nothing but an honest offer of safety to someone who clearly needed it. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." Vladmír turned back to the wheel and pulled the car into traffic. They drove in silence for several minutes, the city giving way to the outskirts, where old estates sat behind high walls and ancient trees. Diana watched through the window, and he could feel her tension, the way she was poised to run if this turned bad. "What are you?" she asked suddenly. "You're not normal, human, whatever." He could lie, should lie, by every law his kind held sacred, but he found he didn't want to. "Vampire," he said calmly, as if announcing he was a banker or a professor. To his surprise, she didn't scream, didn't panic, just absorbed this information with the same resignation she'd shown earlier. "That makes sense," she murmured. "You look like you walked out of a Gothic painting. Very pale, very dramatic." The corner of his mouth twitched, an almost smile he quickly suppressed. "I'm also very old and very dangerous. Most people run screaming when they learn what I am. Maybe I'm too tired to run, or maybe I just don't care anymore." She leaned her head against the window. "Are you going to drink my blood?" Not without permission, and I'm not particularly hungry at the moment. That's good, I guess. They fell silent again. Vladmir turned down a private road, and the Court of Thorns rose before them, a Gothic mansion that had been his home for the past century, all dark stone and tower spires, looking like something transplanted from the 15th century and grafted onto the modern world. Diana sat up straighter, taking it in, thinking, "You live here? I am king of the Eastern Bloodline. This is the Court of Thorns, seat of my power." He pulled through the gates, which opened automatically at his approach. "You will be safe here. No one enters without my permission." He parked in the circular drive before the main entrance and got out, moving around to open her door. Diana climbed out slowly, staring up at the mansion with something like wonder on her face. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Terrifying, but beautiful." "An apt description of my kind in general," Vladmir observed. He gestured toward the entrance. "Come, you need rest, proper rest, in an actual bed." She followed him up the stone steps and through the massive oak doors. The interior of the court was exactly what one might expect: high ceilings with exposed beams, dark wood paneling, tapestries depicting ancient battles, and scattered among it all, enough modern comfort to make it livable. Leather furniture, soft rugs, electric lighting designed to mimic candlelight. A vampire appeared from a side corridor, tall and lean with the same pale hair and skin that marked their kind. His eyes were red rather than silver younger blood. He took one look at Diana and went very still. "Sire," he said carefully, "you brought a human here." "Her name is Diana, Lucian. She will be staying with us. Prepare the Rose guest room and have Katya bring her some food." Vladmir's tone left no room for argument. Lucian's crimson eyes flickered with questions, but he bowed. "At once, my king." He disappeared, moving with that preternatural speed their kind possessed. Diana watched him go, then looked at Vladmir. "He called you king. You were serious about that." "Completely serious." She absorbed this, swaying slightly on her feet. Now that she was standing in the light, Vladmir could see how exhausted she truly was. Dark circles under her eyes, skin too pale, the trembling in her hands that spoke of stress and hunger. "Come," he said again, more gently this time, and led her through the corridors to the east wing where the guest quarters were located. The Rose Room was one of the prettier spaces, with cream-colored walls, dark wooden furniture, and a massive four-poster bed draped in deep red velvet. A fire was already crackling in the fireplace, and someone had laid out fresh towels and a nightgown. Diana stood in the doorway, staring at the room like it might disappear if she blinked. "This is for me?" "Yes." Vladmir remained in the hall, giving her space. "The bathroom is through that door. Anything you need, pick up the phone beside the bed and ask. Someone will bring food shortly. In the morning, or rather, when you wake, since morning holds little meaning for my kind, we will talk properly. For now, rest." She turned to look at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Vladmir considered the question. Why indeed? You could say it was curiosity, strategy, boredom. But standing here, seeing the fragile hope on her face, he found himself saying something closer to the truth. "Because you needed help, and I was there to provide it. Sometimes it is that simple." Diana wiped at her eyes quickly. "Thank you. I mean it. Thank you." He inclined his head, a gesture that was almost a bow, and left her to her rest. As he walked back through the corridors toward his private chambers, Lucian fell into step beside him. "My king, the council is asking questions. You left abruptly, and now you return with a human girl." "Let them ask," Vladmir said calmly. "I will answer when I choose to answer. They worry about exposure, about the old laws, bringing a human here. She will not expose us." He said it with complete certainty, though he couldn't quite explain why he was so sure. "And the old laws state that those under the protection of the king are inviolate. She is under my protection now." Lucian was quiet for a moment. "You marked her?" No, but I will, if that's what it takes to keep her safe." His second in command studied him with those ancient red eyes. "You've known her for all of 2 hours. And in 2 hours, she's managed to intrigue me more than the past decade of court politics." Vladmir stopped walking and turned to face Lucian fully. "Something brought her to my car, Lucian. Something broke through wards that have held for a century. I intend to find out what, and in the meantime, she stays here, safe, Under my protection. Make sure the others understand this." Lucian bowed. "As you command, sire." Vladimir continued to his chambers, but sleep such as it was for his kind eluded him. Instead, he stood by the window, watching the night sky begin to pale toward dawn, and thought about a girl who'd fallen asleep in his car, and somehow, inexplicably, slipped past every defense he'd built around his heart. Diana woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of fresh bread. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then, it all came rushing back: the car, the vampire, the impossible Gothic mansion. She sat up slowly, half expecting to find herself back in the horrible apartment she'd fled, the whole thing a stress-induced dream. But no, she was in a gorgeous bedroom, wearing a silk nightgown she didn't remember putting on, and someone had left a tray of food on the table beside the bed: bread, cheese, fruit, and what looked like tea. Her stomach growled. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Diana devoured the food, her mind racing. She should be terrified. She was in a vampire's house, far from anything familiar, with no plan and no resources. But the bed was soft, the food was good, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. Actually safe, not just hiding and hoping. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, pulling the robe that had been laid out over her nightgown. A woman entered, vampire pale with silver-white hair, bound in an intricate braid. Her eyes were a deep violet, and she moved with that same unsettling grace they all seemed to possess. She was carrying a stack of clothing. "Good afternoon," the woman said, her accent similar to Vladmir's but softer. "I am Katya, head of the household staff. The king thought you might need proper clothing." Diana looked at the clothes: dark jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments, all in her size. How did he know my size? The king is very observant. Katya set the clothes on the bed and studied Diana with open curiosity. "You are the human who slept in his car. News travels fast, I guess. In this house, everything travels fast. We are all very interested in you." Katya's smile showed a hint of fang. "It has been a very long time since the king brought anyone here, particularly a human, particularly one he seems determined to protect." Diana didn't know what to say to that. She changed the subject. "What time is it?" "Nearly 3 in the afternoon. You slept for 12 hours. Katya moved toward the door. "When you are dressed, the king requests your presence in his study. I will return in 10 minutes to show you the way." True to her word, Katya returned exactly 10 minutes later to find Diana dressed and attempting to do something with her hair. The vampire woman led her through a maze of corridors, pointing out various rooms: library, dining hall, conservatory, until they reached a heavy wooden door. Katya knocked once, then opened it, and gestured Diana inside. The study was exactly what she'd expected: floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, comfortable chairs, and a fire burning in yet another fireplace. Vladimir stood by the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light that streamed in. He turned as she entered. In the daylight, he was even more striking. The sunlight didn't harm him, another myth dispelled, but it did seem to make him more otherworldly. His white hair gleamed like fresh snow. His pale skin was flawless as marble, and those silver eyes seemed to glow with their own light. He was wearing dark trousers and a white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were lean and strong. Somehow, the casual attire made him seem more dangerous, not less. "Diana," he greeted her, "I trust you slept well." "Better than I have in months." She stayed near the door, suddenly uncertain. "Thank you. For everything. The room, the food, the clothes." "You're welcome." He gestured to one of the chairs before the fire. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." She settled into the chair, and he took the one opposite, sitting with that perfect posture that spoke of centuries of breeding and training. First," he said, "I need you to tell me about the men you were hiding from, the ones who hurt you." Diana's hand went instinctively to her wrist, covering the fading bruise. "How did you—" "I noticed things, and I can smell the fear on you, the trauma. I would know what you're running from." She didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to relive those horrible months, but he was looking at her with such intensity, such genuine concern, that the words came tumbling out despite herself. "His name was Marcus. We dated for 6 months before he started getting controlling, jealous, then violent. She stared at the fire, unable to meet Vladmir's eyes. I tried to leave, but he found me. Every time. He said I belonged to him, that I'd never get away. The last time, she touched her wrist again. The last time, he broke into my apartment, said if I tried to leave again, he'd kill me. He meant it. I could see it in his eyes. So you ran. So I ran. I'd been walking for hours, trying to figure out where to go. I had no money, no phone. I left everything behind because I was afraid he'd track me somehow. I was so tired and scared, and I saw your car, and the door just opened, like it was meant to be. Vladmir was very still, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, and his voice was cold as winter frost. This Marcus, does he know where you are? I don't think so. I've been careful not to leave a trail. Good. His eyes held hers. He will not find you here, and if he does, he will regret it for the very short remainder of his life. The casual menace in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, Diana felt something inside her chest loosen, a knot of fear she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. You'd do that? Kill someone for me? Without hesitation, Vladmir said simply. No one harms those under my protection. No one. Diana believed him. More than that, she was grateful for it, which probably said something about how broken she'd become. The second matter we must discuss, Vladmir continued, his tone shifting to something more contemplative, is how you managed to enter my car. I've been thinking on it all day, and there's only one explanation I can conceive. What's that? You have magic in your bloodline. Old magic, likely dormant until a moment of extreme need. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Diana, do you know anything about your family history, particularly your maternal line? Diana frowned, thinking back. My mom died when I was 16. She never talked much about her family. I know her mother, my grandmother, was from somewhere in Eastern Europe originally. Romania, maybe? Or Hungary? I'm not sure. She died before I was born. Vladmir's expression shifted, something like recognition flickering in his eyes. Did your mother ever exhibit unusual abilities? Intuition that was too accurate? Dreams that came true? An affinity for knowing things she shouldn't? Diana hesitated, remembering. She always knew when I was in trouble. Even if I was across town, she'd call or show up, like she could sense it. And she had these dreams sometimes. She'd wake up and tell me to avoid certain places or people, and later I'd find out something bad had happened there. I thought it was just mother's intuition or lucky guesses. It was magic, Vladmir said firmly. Bloodline magic, passed from mother to daughter. Rare among humans, but not unheard of. In moments of great distress, it can manifest in unexpected ways, guiding you to safety, for instance, or opening locks that should be impossible to breach. Diana stared at him. You're saying I have magic? Like actual magic? Dormant magic, waiting to be awakened, and last night, your desperate need for safety triggered it. It led you to my car specifically because some part of you, some ancient instinct, recognized that I could protect you. It sounded insane. But then, she was sitting in a vampire's mansion, discussing bloodline magic, so insanity was relative. Is that why you're helping me? Because I have this magic? Initially, it was simple curiosity, Vladmir admitted. But now I help you because you deserve it. Because in a very short time, Diana Novak, you have become someone I find myself unwilling to let come to harm. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact yet weighted with meaning, made her heart skip. She looked at him properly, this ancient vampire king who'd taken her in without question, and felt something shift inside her. Not just gratitude, something more complicated. I don't understand you, she said softly. You're this powerful king, and I'm just nobody. Why do you care? Vladmir was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. I have lived for 300 years, Diana. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have played politics with creatures who predate written language. I have everything one might want, power, wealth, immortality, and until last night, I had not felt genuinely surprised by anything in decades. You surprised me. You continue to surprise me. In a life as long as mine, that is precious beyond measure. Diana's breath caught. The way he looked at her like she was something rare and valuable made her feel more seen than she had in years. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, you stay here while you heal, both physically and emotionally. You are safe within these walls. And while you are here, I will teach you to understand your magic, to control it, so that you never need to run blind again." And after that, his smile was small but genuine. "After that, we shall see." The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Diana had her own suite of rooms in the East Wing, and the staff, all vampires, all unfailingly polite, made sure she wanted for nothing. But it was Vladmír who occupied most of her time. He was true to his word about teaching her magic. Every evening, as the sun set and the vampires of the court stirred to wakefulness, he would come to the library where she waited, and they would work on awakening her abilities. It started small, lighting candles with her mind, sensing the presence of others through walls, reading the emotional resonance of objects. Vladmír was a patient teacher, guiding her through exercises with the same focus he likely brought to matters of state. "Magic is about will and intention," he explained one evening as she struggled to move a feather across the table using only her thoughts. "You must want it to move, yes, but more than that, you must know it will move. Certainty, not hope." Diana glared at the feather, willing it to budge. It trembled, but stayed put. "I'm terrible at this," she muttered. "You are learning. There is a difference." Vladmír moved closer, standing behind her chair. "May I?" At her nod, he placed his hands lightly on her shoulders. His touch was cool but not cold, and she felt a strange energy flow from him, settling her frantic thoughts. "Breathe," he murmured. "Find the quiet place inside yourself. The magic lives there, in the stillness." Diana closed her eyes and breathed, sinking into that quiet space, and there it was, a warm glow in her chest, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She reached for it mentally, directed it outward, and heard Vladmír's pleased sound as the feather lifted and drifted across the table. "Excellent," he said, and the pride in his voice made her ridiculously happy. She opened her eyes to find him smiling at her, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face into something breathtaking. "I did it," she said, laughing. "You did. I told you it was possible." Their eyes met, and something passed between them in that moment, something electric and dangerous and wonderful. Vladmír's hands were still on her shoulders, and Diana found herself leaning back slightly into his touch. Then he stepped away, breaking the spell, and she tried not to feel disappointed. "Again," he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. "Practice makes permanent." But as the days turned into weeks, those charged moments became more frequent. A brush of hands when he passed her a book, the way he watched her during meals, as if memorizing every detail. The night she found him in the music room, playing piano with such heartbreaking beauty that she stood in the doorway listening until he noticed her and stopped, looking almost embarrassed. "I didn't know you played," she said, moving into the room. "I learned centuries ago. It helps me think." He shifted on the bench. "Would you like to learn?" Diana sat beside him, acutely aware of how close they were, shoulders nearly touching. Vladmír guided her hands to the keys, showing her a simple melody, his fingers cool and precise over hers. "Like this," he murmured, and she could feel his breath on her neck, sending shivers down her spine. She tried to focus on the music, but all she could think about was his proximity, the way her body seemed to hum with awareness of him. When she inevitably hit a wrong note, she laughed, breaking the tension. "I'm better at magic than music, apparently. Music, like magic, requires practice." But he was smiling again, that rare, wonderful smile. "Though I confess, you learn remarkably quickly for someone who is new to both. I have a good teacher." They sat there in the candlelit music room, playing simple melodies together, and Diana realized with startling clarity that she was happy. Despite everything, the trauma she'd fled, the strangeness of her new life, the fact that she was living in a house full of vampires, she was genuinely happy. And it was because of him. This ancient, powerful king who treated her like she mattered, who made her feel safe and valued and seen. She was falling for him. Had probably been falling since that first night in the car, and that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. 1 month after her arrival at the Court of Thorns, everything changed. Diana was in the library, practicing a particularly difficult shielding spell, when raised voices echoed from somewhere in the mansion. She froze, her magical shields flickering out as her concentration broke. Lucian appeared in the doorway moments later, his expression grim. "Diana, you need to come with me. Now." "What's wrong?" "Someone has come looking for you." Her blood went cold. "Marcus?" "The human wouldn't give his name, but he is being very insistent that we return his property." Lucian's lip curled in disgust. "The king is displeased." That, Diana suspected, was a massive understatement. She followed Lucian through the corridors to the main hall, where a crowd of vampires had gathered. They parted to let her through, and she saw Vladmír standing in the center of the room, every inch the terrifying king she'd somehow forgotten he could be. His silver eyes were blazing, his posture radiating lethal intent, and when he spoke, his voice carried enough power to make the walls tremble. "You dare come to my court and demand I hand over one under my protection?" And there, looking significantly less confident than he usually did, was Marcus. Diana's ex-boyfriend had always been tall and broad, someone who used his size to intimidate. But standing before Vladmír, surrounded by vampires, he looked small and pathetic. His eyes found Diana, and ugly satisfaction crossed his face. "There you are, baby. Let's go. We have a lot to talk about." "She's not going anywhere with you," Vladmír said, his voice dropping to a lethal purr. "And if you call her that again, I will remove your tongue." Marcus's bravado flickered. "Look, I don't know what she told you, but she's my girlfriend. We had a fight. She ran off. I've been looking for her for weeks. This doesn't concern you." "On the contrary, Diana is a guest in my court, under my personal protection. That makes this very much my concern." Vladmír took a single step forward, and Marcus actually backed up. "You broke into her home. You hurt her. You threatened to kill her. She owes you nothing. You will leave now, and you will never seek her out again." "The hell I will." Marcus's fear was turning to anger, which Diana knew from experience was far more dangerous. "Diana, get over here, now!" The command that had worked so many times before, that had kept her trapped in fear for months. But standing in the court of thorns, surrounded by protection, with Vladmír between her and Marcus, Diana felt something inside her snap. "No," she said clearly. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Marcus. It's over. It's been over. Leave." Marcus's face flushed with rage. He started toward her, hand raised, and Diana flinched instinctively. He didn't get within 5 feet of her. Vladmír moved faster than her eyes could track, and suddenly Marcus was pinned against the wall, held there by one pale hand wrapped around his throat. The Vampire King's fangs were fully extended, his eyes burning with ancient fury. "You made a critical error coming here," Vladmír said, his voice utterly calm despite the violence of his actions. "I told you Diana is under my protection. Do you understand what that means?" Marcus struggled, choking, unable to answer. "BT." "It means," Vladmír continued, "that her enemies are my enemies. It means that anyone who harms her will face the full extent of my wrath. It means that I, who have lived for 3 centuries and ruled this territory for 2, will personally ensure you suffer for every moment of fear you caused her." "Vladmír," Diana said softly, though she wasn't sure if she was asking him to stop or to continue. He glanced back at her, and his expression softened fractionally. "Do you want him to live?" The question hung in the air. Diana looked at Marcus, this man who'd made her life a nightmare, who'd stolen her sense of safety and self-worth. Part of her wanted to say no, wanted to watch Vladmír end him, but that wasn't who she was, even now, even after everything. "I want him to leave and never come back," she said. "I want to know he can't hurt me anymore. But I don't want his death on my conscience." Vladmír studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He turned back to Marcus, leaning in close. "You heard her. She is merciful where I am not, so I will give you one chance, human. One." He released Marcus, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. "You will leave this city tonight. You will never speak her name again. You will never seek her out, never think of her, never so much as dream of her. Because if you do, if I catch even a whisper that you have tried to find her, I will hunt you down, and I will spend days making you regret the moment you were born. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded frantically, scrambling to his feet. "And just to ensure you remember this lesson," Vladmír added, his eyes flashing silver, "look at me." Marcus met his gaze, and Diana watched as Vladmir's compulsion took hold. The vampire's power crashed over Marcus like a wave, and when it receded, her ex-boyfriend looked dazed and terrified. "Go," Vladmír commanded. "Run." Marcus ran. The hall remained silent for several seconds after he disappeared. Then Vladmír turned to Diana, the fury draining from his face, replaced by concern. "Are you all right?" Diana realized she was shaking. The confrontation, seeing Marcus again, all of it had torn open wounds she'd thought were starting to heal. But underneath the fear was something else. Relief. Liberation. "I'm okay," she said, and it was true. "Thank you for protecting me, for not killing him even though you wanted to." "I would have," Vladmír said quietly, crossing the distance between them. "Gladly. But you asked for mercy, and I will always honor your wishes." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently cupped her face in his cool hands. The gesture was tender, protective, and Diana found herself leaning into him. "You are safe now," he murmured. "Truly safe. He will never trouble you again." "Because of you," she whispered. "Because you are mine to protect." The possessiveness in his tone should have alarmed her after months of Marcus's twisted ownership, but this was different. Vladmír wasn't claiming her like property. He was offering himself as her shield, her sanctuary. Diana made a decision. She rose on her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Vladmír went utterly still, as if shocked. Then he made a low sound and kissed her back, his arms coming around her waist to pull her close. The kiss was gentle despite his obvious restraint, his cool lips moving against hers with centuries of experience and barely contained want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard despite the fact that he didn't technically need to breathe, Vladmír rested his forehead against hers. "Diana," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. "You should be certain. I am not like the humans you have known. I am ancient and I am dangerous, and once I claim you as mine, I will never let you go." "I'm certain," she said, meeting his silver eyes. "I've been certain for weeks. I love you, Vladmír." His expression transformed, wonder and joy, and something like relief washing over his features. "My Diana, my brave, beautiful Diana. I have loved you since you fell asleep in my car and turned my entire existence sideways." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Diana felt her magic rise to meet his power, the two energies intertwining like they had been waiting for this moment. Around them, she heard the other vampires retreating, giving them privacy, but she barely noticed. All she knew was that she was safe, she was loved, and she was home. The weeks following their confession were perhaps the happiest of Diana's life. She and Vladmír became inseparable, spending every evening together talking, learning, loving. He taught her more about vampire culture, about the complex politics of his world. She showed him human things he'd forgotten in his long existence, like the joy of terrible movies and the satisfaction of chocolate at midnight. Her magic flourished under his guidance and her growing confidence. She could shield herself now, sense danger, even compel truth from those weaker-willed than herself. Vladmír was endlessly proud of her progress. "You are magnificent," he told her one evening, as she successfully maintained 3 different spells simultaneously. "More powerful than I initially suspected." "Good genes, apparently," Diana joked, but she was pleased. They were in his private chambers now more often than not. Vladmir's rooms were stunning, all dark wood and rich fabrics, with a massive bed that probably cost more than her entire previous life. They spent hours there, talking and touching and learning each other. Vladmír was an attentive lover in every sense, patient and passionate and utterly focused on her pleasure. He'd been alive for centuries, and it showed in the way he touched her, the way he knew exactly what she needed before she did. But it wasn't just physical. He listened when she talked about her past, her dreams, her fears. He shared stories of his own long life, the triumphs and regrets of 300 years. They built something real between them, something that transcended the supernatural circumstances of their meeting. 2 months after Diana's arrival, Vladmír called a formal court session. She'd attended a few of these before, watching from the sidelines as he conducted business with various vampire factions. But this time, he asked her to stand beside him. The Court of Thorns' grand hall was filled with vampires from across the territory, all pale and beautiful and deadly. They watched Diana with curiosity and, in some cases, barely concealed hostility. She was human. She didn't belong here, their expressions said. Vladmír stood from his throne, an actual throne, ornate and ancient, and the hall fell silent. "I have called you here to witness a formal declaration," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Diana Novak, daughter of the bloodline of seers, student of the old ways, is hereby placed under my personal protection as bonded consort to the king of the Eastern Bloodline." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Diana had known this was coming. Vladmír had discussed it with her, explained what it meant, but hearing it declared so publicly made her heart race. "She is to be afforded all rights and privileges of my household," Vladmír continued. "Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any harm done to her will be answered with the full force of my power. This is my will, and it is law." An older vampire stepped forward, his expression disapproving. "My king, this is highly irregular. A human consort? What of the old traditions, the need for proper vampire bloodlines?" "The old traditions," Vladmír said coldly, "are mine to uphold or change as I see fit. I am king. My word is law. If any here question my decision, speak now." The hall remained silent. No one was brave enough or foolish enough to challenge him directly. Vladmír extended his hand to Diana. She took it, and he pulled her close, turning to address the court with her at his side. "Diana has proven herself worthy of my regard and my protection. She possesses magic that many vampires would envy. More than that, she possesses courage, compassion, and strength of will. I am honored that she has chosen to stand with me." He looked down at her, and the love in his eyes was unmistakable. "Before all gathered here, I claim you as mine, Diana Novak, my consort, my partner, my heart's companion. Do you accept this bond?" This was the formal part, the ritual that would tie her to him in the eyes of vampire law. Diana had memorized her response, but the words came from her heart rather than rote memory. "I accept Vladmír Cervenák. I choose you freely, without compulsion or fear. I am yours, as you are mine." Vladmír smiled, and then he bit his wrist, letting his blood well up dark and rich. "Drink," he said softly, "and be bound to me for as long as you live." Diana had known this part was coming too. Vampire blood wouldn't turn her that required death and rebirth, but it would create a mystical bond between them, allowing them to sense each other's emotions and location. It would also extend her life significantly, giving her decades instead of the handful of years a normal human might have. She raised his wrist to her lips and drank. The blood was strange, cold, and metallic with an underlying sweetness. Power rushed through her veins, Vladmír's ancient strength mixing with her own magic, and she gasped as the bond snapped into place. Suddenly she could feel him, his presence bright and steady in her mind. His love for her, his satisfaction, his fierce protectiveness, all of it flooded through their new connection. Vladmír drew his wrist away and pulled her into a kiss, sealing the bond before the entire court. When they broke apart, he turned to address the assembled vampires. "It's swat. It is done. Diana is my bonded consort. Spread the word throughout the territories. Let all know that she is mine." The court bowed, accepting the declaration. As the formal session ended and vampires began to mingle, several approached to offer their congratulations, some genuine, others clearly political. Diana handled it with grace, drawing on her newfound confidence in the steady presence of Vladmír at her side. Later, alone in his chambers, Vladmír held her close. "How do you feel?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Different. Good different. I can feel you in my head, in my heart." Diana smiled up at him. "It's like you're part of me now. As you are part of me." His expression grew serious. "Diana, I need you to understand what you have agreed to. This bond is permanent. For as long as you live, we are connected. And while the blood will extend your life, you are still mortal. One day, decades from now, I will lose you." She heard the pain in his voice, the fear of eventual loss. "I know. We talked about this." "And you are certain? You could still have a normal human life, Find someone who ages with you." Diana placed her hand over his mouth, silencing him. "Stop. I don't want normal. I don't want someone else. I want you, Vladmir. For however many years I have, I want to spend them with you. That's enough. It has to be enough." "It will never be enough time," he said roughly, pulling her against him. "But I'm grateful for every moment I have with you." They held each other in the firelight, and Diana felt the rightness of her choice settle deep in her bones. This was where she belonged, not running from her past, but standing firm in the present she'd chosen, with the man, the vampire who'd saved her and claimed her heart. 6 months into their bond, an unexpected complication arose. Diana was in the library researching defensive spells when she felt a strange pull through the connection she shared with Vladmir. Not distress exactly, but concern. She followed the feeling through the mansion to his study, where she found him in deep discussion with Lucian and Katya. They all looked up as she entered. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. Vladmir beckoned her over. "Nothing wrong precisely, but there is news you should hear. Lucien?" The vampire second in command inclined his head. "My lady, we have received word from the Western Bloodline. Their king, Ambrose, requests a formal meeting with our court. Specifically, he wishes to meet you." Diana frowned. "Me? Why?" "Because word of your existence has spread throughout vampire society," Katya explained. "A human consort to a vampire king is unprecedented in modern times. Many are curious, some are skeptical, and a few, like Ambrose, are interested in the political implications." "He wants to assess if I'm a weakness he can exploit," Diana translated. Vladmir's expression darkened. "He can try." "When is this meeting?" Diana asked. 3 days hence. He will come here with a small delegation." Lucian looked at Vladmir. "We cannot refuse without insult, sire." "No," Vladmir agreed reluctantly. "We cannot." "Very well. Prepare the staterooms. We will receive him with all appropriate ceremony." He turned to Diana. "You are not required to attend if you prefer not to. I will not parade you for others' amusement." "I'll be there," Diana said firmly. "I'm your consort. That means standing at your side even when it's uncomfortable." Pride flashed through their bond. Vladmir reached out and took her hand, raising it to his lips. "As you wish, my heart." The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. The Court of Thorns was cleaned and polished until it gleamed. Diana was fitted for formal gowns. Vampire court fashion tended toward the dramatic and briefed extensively on proper etiquette and protocol. "Don't show fear," Katya advised as she helped Diana into a stunning dark green gown the night of the meeting. "Vampires can smell it, and they will use it against you." "What if I am afraid?" "Then hide it behind confidence. You are the bonded consort of Vladmír Cervenák, one of the oldest and most powerful vampires in existence. Act like it." Diana looked at herself in the mirror. The gown was beautiful, hugging her curves and flowing around her legs. Her dark hair had been styled in an intricate updo, and someone had given her jewelry that was probably worth more than a house. She looked like she belonged in this world now. "I can do this," she said, more to herself than Katya. "Yes," Katya agreed. "You can." Diana made her way to the grand hall, where Vladmir was already waiting. He was dressed in formal court attire, black suit with silver embroidery, his white hair loose around his shoulders, looking every inch the ancient king he was. When he saw her, his eyes lit up with admiration, and something hotter. "You are breathtaking," he said, offering his arm. "You're not so bad yourself," Diana replied, and he actually laughed. They stood together before the thrones. Yes, plural. There was one for her now as the Western delegation arrived. Ambrose, king of the Western Bloodline, swept into the hall with theatrical flair. He was tall and lean like all vampires, with hair so pale it was almost translucent and eyes like amber. He wore crimson and gold, his clothing just as elaborate as Vladmir's. "Brother King," he greeted, bowing just deep enough to be respectful without being deferential. "Thank you for receiving us." "You are welcome in my court," Vladmir replied formally. "May I present my bonded consort, Diana Novak?" Ambrose's amber gaze fixed on Diana, and she fought the urge to squirm under that ancient assessing stare. Instead, she inclined her head gracefully, the way Katya had taught her. "My lady," Ambrose said, "your reputation precedes you. A human who broke through vampire wards, who commands magic of the old bloodlines, who captured the heart of the notoriously solitary Vladmír Cervenák. I confess, I was skeptical, but seeing you here, I begin to understand. Understand what, precisely? Diana asked, keeping her voice level. A slow smile crossed Ambrose's face. Why he chose you. You have steel in you, girl. Not many humans can meet a vampire's eyes without flinching, especially not when that vampire is a king. I've had excellent teachers, Diana said, glancing at Vladmír. The evening progressed with all the formality of a state dinner. Multiple courses were served food for Diana, blood for the vampires, while conversation flowed around topics of territory management, political alliances, and the state of vampire-human relations in the modern world. Diana held her own, contributing where appropriate and listening carefully when she didn't have expertise. She caught Ambrose watching her several times, his expression thoughtful. It wasn't until after dinner, when they'd retired to a smaller sitting room for drinks, that Ambrose addressed the real reason for his visit. I will be frank, Vladmír. Many in the vampire community are concerned about your choice of consort, not because she is human, though that is unusual enough, but because of what it represents. And what does it represent? Vladmír asked, his tone deceptively mild. I change. Evolution. A willingness to break with tradition. Ambrose swirled the blood in his glass. Some fear that if one king takes a human consort, others may follow, that our careful separation from the human world may begin to erode. And you? What do you fear? I fear nothing, Ambrose said. I am intrigued. The old ways have served us well, but the world changes whether we will it or not. Perhaps it is time we changed with it. He looked at Diana. Tell me, my lady, do you intend to be turned, to join the ranks of immortals? Diana had thought about this question extensively. She and Vladmír had discussed it many times. No, she said clearly. I will live my natural life, extended as it may be by our bond, and when my time comes I will die as humans do. A mortal life by choice. Fascinating. Ambrose tilted his head. And you, Vladmír? You will allow this, knowing you could keep her forever if you wished? It is not my choice to make, Vladmír said firmly. Diana's mortality, her humanity, these are part of who she is. I would not change her even if I could. I love her as she is. Something in Ambrose's expression softened. Then you are wiser than I gave you credit for, Brother King. Or perhaps simply more besotted. He raised his glass in a toast. To Lady Diana Novak, may your life be long and your love enduring. They drank, and Diana felt some of the tension leave the room. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly, and when the Western delegation finally departed the next morning, Ambrose clasped Vladmír's arm in genuine friendship. You have found something rare, he said quietly. Guard it well. Always, Vladmír promised. After they left, Diana and Vladmír walked through the gardens behind the court, enjoying the night air. That went better than expected, Diana observed. Ambrose is reasonable for all his dramatics, and he was right about one thing: you do have steel in you. Vladmír pulled her close. I was proud to have you at my side tonight. I was terrified the entire time. I know, I could feel it through our bond, but you showed none of it. You were magnificent. Diana leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and loved despite the challenges they'd faced. Do you think there will be more visits? More vampires coming to judge whether I'm worthy? Undoubtedly, but they will all reach the same conclusion, that you are more than worthy. You are exceptional. They stood in the moonlit garden, and Diana thought about how far she'd come from that desperate girl sleeping in a stranger's car. She'd found magic, purpose, love, and a place to belong, not despite the strangeness of her new life, but because of it. I love you, she said, tilting her face up for a kiss. And I love you, my Diana, my heart, my home. As the seasons changed and time passed, life in the Court of Thorns settled into a comfortable rhythm. Diana's magic continued to grow stronger until she could hold her own against most of the vampires in Vladmír's court. She became not just his consort, but his advisor, offering perspectives he'd never considered in his long existence. She helped modernize some of the court's practices, bringing efficiency and fresh thinking to ancient traditions. She established better relations with the human community, creating carefully managed programs that allowed limited interaction while maintaining the secrecy necessary for vampire survival. And through it all, her relationship with Vladmir deepened into something unshakable. They were partners in every sense, lovers, friends, confidants. The bond between them grew so strong that they could sometimes communicate without words, just feelings and impressions flowing through their connection. 2 years after Diana first fell asleep in his car, Vladmir surprised her with a trip. They traveled to Romania, to the region where her grandmother had been born. With his resources and connections, Vladmir had tracked down Diana's family history, following the bloodline back centuries. They stood in an ancient cemetery, looking at weathered headstones marked with names Diana recognized from the fragments her mother had shared. "Your family were known as the Dream Weavers," Vladmir explained, his hand warm in hers despite his natural coolness. "Powerful seers and magic users, they were respected even among my kind. Your grandmother emigrated to escape persecution during the wars, but the magic lived on in your mother, and now in you." Diana traced her fingers over her great-great-grandmother's name, feeling a connection to these women who'd come before her. "Thank you for this, for helping me understand where I come from." "You come from strength and power and resilience," Vladmir said, "and you carry that legacy forward with grace." They spent a week exploring Romania, visiting places significant to both Diana's history and Vladmir's long life. He showed her the castle where he'd been born human, before his turning. She showed him how to use a smartphone properly, which amused them both. On their last night, they stood on a balcony overlooking the Carpathian Mountains, the ancient peaks dark against the starlit sky. "I've been thinking," Diana said, leaning back against Vladmir's chest as his arms came around her, "about the future." "What about it?" "I know I won't live forever, that eventually I'll age and die while you go on. But I want to make the most of the time I have. I want to do something meaningful with this magic, this position I have." "What did you have in mind?" "A school. A place where humans with magic can learn to control it, understand it, so they don't have to stumble through it alone like I did." She turned in his arms to face him. "We could create something lasting, something that helps people." Vladmir's expression was thoughtful. "A school for human magic users, sponsored by the vampire court. It would be controversial." "The best things usually are," he laughed, a sound of pure delight. "Very well. We will create your school. I will provide the resources and protection. You will provide the vision and teaching. Together, we will build something new." Diana kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. When they broke apart, Vladmir rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he said softly, "for coming into my life, for teaching me that even after 300 years I could still be surprised, still fall in love, still find purpose beyond mere existence." "Thank you for stopping when you found me in your car," Diana replied, "for protecting me, for loving me, for giving me a home. Always my heart, for as long as you live and beyond that in memory. You are mine, and I am yours." They stood together in the Romanian night, two souls who'd found each other against all odds. And Diana knew that whatever time they had, whether decades or just years, it would be enough. Because they would spend it together, building something beautiful from the strange circumstances of their meeting. The girl who'd once run in fear had become a woman of power and purpose. The vampire king who'd driven in silent circles, unsure what to do with his unexpected passenger, had found love and joy again. And together, they would create a legacy that would outlast even Diana's mortal life. As stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, Diana Novak and Vladmír Cervenák held each other close, knowing they were home. 5 years after that first fateful night, the Thornwood Academy opened its doors. Built on the grounds adjacent to the Court of Thorns, it was a beautiful stone building that blended Gothic architecture with modern amenities. 30 students arrived for the first term, all humans with latent magic, carefully identified and invited to study. Diana stood with Vladmir at the opening ceremony, watching nervous young people file into the great hall. She remembered being that uncertain, that afraid of her own abilities. "Nervous?" Vladmir murmured. "Excited," Diana corrected. "This is going to change lives." And it did. Over the following years, Thornwood Academy became renowned in the hidden magical community. Diana proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and understanding with her students. Some of Vladmir's court volunteered to teach as well. Katya led classes on magical theory, and Lucian taught combat magic and defense. The school created a bridge between the human and vampire worlds, fostering understanding and cooperation. Other vampire courts began to take notice, some approaching Vladmir about establishing similar programs in their territories. Diana's life became full in ways she'd never imagined. Teaching gave her purpose. Her relationship with Vladmir gave her joy. The magical community they were building gave her hope for the future. She aged slowly, the vampire blood in her system maintaining her youth far beyond normal human limits. While her students came and went, growing older and moving on, Diana remained, a constant presence at Thornwood and in Vladmir's life. 10 years after their bonding, she stood in front of a mirror, examining the face that looked back at her. She appeared to be in her late 20s still, though she was now in her 30s. The magic and the bond were working exactly as Vladmir had promised. "Do you regret it?" Vladmir asked from the doorway. "Living this half-life, neither fully human nor vampire?" Diana turned to face him. He looked exactly as he had the night she'd met him, ageless, beautiful, eternal. But she'd learned to read the emotions behind that perfect facade, and she saw the worry there. "Never," she said firmly. "I chose this. I choose you. Every day I choose this life we've built together." "Even knowing how it will end?" They didn't talk about it often, but it was always there, the knowledge that someday, despite the extended lifespan the bond granted her, Diana would age and die. Vladmir would be left alone again, carrying the memory of their love into his endless future. "Even knowing that," Diana said. She crossed to him, taking his cool hands in her warmer ones. "Vladmir, listen to me. I could have had a safe, normal, boring human life. Instead, I got adventure and magic and love beyond my wildest dreams. I got to build something meaningful. I got you. Whatever time we have, it's worth it." He pulled her close, and she felt the tremor of emotion through their bond. Fear and love and gratitude all tangled together. "I will miss you," he said quietly. "When you are gone, I will miss you for the rest of my existence." "Good," Diana said, making him huff a surprised laugh. "I'd be offended if you didn't. But Vladmir, you'll go on. You'll keep the school running. You'll remember me, and that will be enough." "Nothing will ever be enough," he said. "But I will honor your memory by living the life you would want me to live, by protecting what we built together." They held each other in the quiet of their chambers, and Diana sent love and reassurance through their bond. She knew he struggled with her mortality in a way she never quite could for her. Death was a natural endpoint. For him, it was an approaching disaster he was powerless to prevent. But they had time still. Years, probably decades if she was lucky. And she intended to make every moment count. The years continued to pass in a blur of teaching and love and growth. Diana became renowned in magical circles as one of the most powerful seers of her generation. Students came from around the world to study with her. She published books on magic theory that became standard texts. She advised vampire courts on human-vampire relations. And through it all, Vladmir was at her side, her partner, her protector, her love. 25 years after their bonding, Diana stood in front of another mirror and saw the first signs of aging that even vampire blood couldn't completely halt. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes, a strand or two of silver in her dark hair. She was 50 years old, though she looked perhaps 35. Vladmir came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Liar," Diana said, but she was smiling. "I'm getting old. You are becoming more yourself with each passing year. The magic settles deeper into you, adding strength to beauty. You are magnificent." Diana leaned back against him, grateful beyond words for his unwavering love. Many human partners would have sought younger replacements by now, but Vladmir loved her more, not less, as time marked her. "How much time do you think we have?" she asked quietly. They'd avoided this conversation for years, but it hung between them now, impossible to ignore. Vladmir was silent for a long moment. "The bond will sustain you well beyond normal human limits, with your magic strengthening you as well. Another 20 years, perhaps 30. You will age slowly, Maintain your faculties and power. When the end comes, it will be gentle. 20 to 30 years. It sounded like both forever and no time at all. Enough time to train a successor, Diana said practically, to ensure Thornwood continues after I'm gone. Diana. No, we need to talk about this. She turned in his arms. I want the school to continue. I want the work we've done to outlast me. Help me find someone to take over when I can't teach anymore. Vladmir's jaw clenched, but he nodded. As you wish. They found their successor in an unexpected place. Fiona Emerson, a young woman with powerful magic and a gift for teaching, had been one of Diana's first students. She'd gone on to study at other magical institutions, but when Diana reached out, she returned to Thornwood immediately. You want me to run the school? Fiona asked, shocked, sitting in Diana's office. Eventually, Diana said. For now, I want you to work alongside me. Learn the administrative side, the politics, the relationships with the vampire courts, so that when the time comes, you're ready. When the time comes, Fiona repeated slowly. Her eyes widened. Diana, are you ill? I'm mortal, Diana said simply, and I won't live forever, but Thornwood should. I'm planning for the future. Fiona's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I'll do it. I'll make you proud. You already do. The next 5 years passed with Fiona learning everything Diana could teach her. The younger woman was brilliant and dedicated, and Diana felt confident that Thornwood would be in good hands. But time was catching up with her now. At 55, Diana looked perhaps 45, but she could feel her body beginning to slow. The magic still burned bright, but her mortal flesh was reaching its limits, even reinforced by Vladmir's blood and her own power. She began to have dreams, vivid and prophetic like her mother and grandmother before her. In them, she saw Thornwood flourishing for generations. She saw Vladmir, alone but carrying on, honoring her memory by protecting what they'd built. She saw a future where humans and vampires worked together openly, the foundation they'd laid becoming a cornerstone of a new age. The dreams are getting stronger, she told Vladmir one evening as they sat by the fire in their chambers. I think my magic knows my time is growing short. It's showing me what comes after. Vladmir's hand tightened on hers. I'm not ready to lose you. I know, my love, but ready or not, it's coming. She cupped his face with her free hand, memorizing every perfect feature. Vladmir, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep living, really living, not just existing. Promise me you'll find joy again even after I'm gone. Promise me you won't shut yourself away from the world. Diana. Promise me, she insisted. I can't leave peacefully if I think you'll spend the next 300 years mourning. You've given me such a beautiful life. Let me give you the gift of permission to move forward. Vladmir pulled her into his arms, and she felt his tears, a vampire's tears, rare and precious, fall into her hair. I promise, he said roughly. I will live. I will keep our work going. I will find joy again, though it will never be quite the same without you. I promise. My heart. Diana held him close, pouring all her love through their bond. Thank you. The end, when it came, was indeed gentle. Diana woke one morning knowing it was her last. She was 60 years old, looking perhaps 50, and the magic that had sustained her was finally ready to let her go. She called for Vladmir, for Fiona, for Katya and Lucian, and all those who'd become family over the decades. They gathered in her chambers, and though sadness hung heavy in the air, there was also love. So much love. Thank you, Diana said, looking at each of them, for making these years so full, for giving me a home, a purpose, a family. We should be thanking you, Fiona said, tears streaming down her face, for everything you've taught us, everything you've built. Diana smiled. Then keep building, keep teaching, keep bringing humans and vampires together. That's all the thanks I need. She turned to Vladmir, who sat on the edge of the bed, holding her hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, she said softly. I have loved you from that first night in your car when you drove in circles trying to figure out what to do with me. Thank you for choosing to keep me, for protecting me, for loving me. I love you, Vladmir said, his voice breaking, beyond words, beyond measure. You are the greatest gift of my long existence. Diana felt her strength fading, the magic releasing its hold, but she wasn't afraid. She could feel Vladmír through their bond, feel his love surrounding her, could feel the magic of Thornwood humming in the background, strong and steady, could see the faces of those she loved, all gathered to say goodbye. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm ready." She closed her eyes, and with Vladmir's hand in hers and love all around her, Diana Novak slipped peacefully away. The funeral was held 3 days later, a blend of human and vampire traditions that would have made Diana smile. Students and teachers from Thornwood attended, along with representatives from vampire courts across Europe. They gathered in the gardens behind the Court of Thorns, where Diana had spent so many happy hours. Vladmír stood at the front, looking exactly as he had 30 years ago when Diana had first met him. But there was a grief in his silver eyes that aged him beyond his centuries. He spoke of Diana's courage, her kindness, her brilliant mind and generous heart. He spoke of how she'd changed not just his life, but the entire structure of vampire-human relations, how her legacy would live on through Thornwood and all those she'd taught. She was mortal, he concluded, his voice carrying to every person gathered. And she knew from the beginning that our time together would be limited. But she chose to love anyway, chose to build anyway, chose to live fully in each moment rather than fear the ending. That is the lesson she leaves us: not to waste our time, however long or short it may be. To love fiercely and live purposefully, to build things that outlast us. He paused, looking at the simple stone marker that would bear Diana's name. She was my bonded consort, my partner, my heart. And though she is gone from this world, she lives on in the work we did together, in the lives she touched, and in my memory. I will carry her with me for all the long ages to come. And I will honor her by living as she asked, openly, purposefully, joyfully. That is her final gift to me, and I will treasure it always. As they laid Diana to rest beneath an ancient oak tree, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the gathering. Someone murmured that it was a good omen. Vladmír, looking up at the sky, chose to believe them. In the months and years that followed, Vladmír kept his promise. He continued to oversee Thornwood Academy, watching it grow and flourish under Fiona's leadership. He strengthened alliances with other vampire courts, promoting Diana's vision of cooperation between species. He found moments of joy in small things: a well-taught class, a student's breakthrough, the first flowers blooming in the garden where Diana rested. The grief never fully left him, but it transformed into something gentler, a sweet ache of remembrance rather than sharp pain. He could think of Diana and smile now, remembering her laughter, her fierce determination, the way she'd challenged him to be better. 10 years after her death, a young human woman arrived at Thornwood Academy seeking to learn magic. She was running from an abusive past, frightened and alone. Fiona brought her to meet Vladmír, and when he looked at her, he saw echoes of Diana, not in appearance, but in that same core of hidden strength waiting to be awakened. "Welcome to Thornwood," he said gently. "You are safe here. Let us teach you to be strong." As the girl smiled tentatively, beginning to believe in safety for the first time in months, Vladmír felt Diana's presence like a warm touch on his shoulder. She was gone, but her work continued. Her legacy lived on, and that, he realized, was exactly what she'd wanted. Vladmír stood in the gardens that evening, by the oak tree where Diana rested. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Thank you," he said softly, speaking to her memory, "for loving me, for changing me, for showing me that even immortals can find purpose beyond mere existence. I will keep your promise, my heart. I will keep living, I will keep building, and I will make you proud." The wind rustled through the oak's leaves, and for just a moment, Vladmír could have sworn he heard Diana's voice, warm with love and approval. He smiled, a real smile that reached his ancient eyes, and turned back toward the Court of Thorns. There was work to do, students to teach, a legacy to maintain. He was Vladmír Cervenák, king of the Eastern Bloodline, bonded consort to Diana Novak, and he had promises to keep. The years stretched ahead of him, long and full of possibility. He would meet them with courage and purpose, carrying Diana's love with him like a light in the darkness, because that was what she'd taught him, that love didn't end with death, that the connections we forge outlast our mortal bodies, that what we build together can echo through eternity. She had found him, or perhaps he had found her, on that strange night so long ago. A girl asleep in the back of his car, and a vampire king who drove in silent circles, both of them searching for something they couldn't name. They had found it in each other. And though their time together had been finite, the love they'd shared was infinite, rippling outward through all they'd created, all the lives they'd touched, all the changes they'd set in motion. In the Court of Thorns, in the halls of Thornwood Academy, in the hearts of those who'd known them, their story lived on. A tale of unexpected love, of courage in the face of mortality, of building something beautiful from the strangest of beginnings. And if, on quiet nights, Vladmír sometimes sat in his car, that same 1967 Mercedes, lovingly maintained and remembered a girl with frightened eyes who'd trusted him to keep her safe, well, that was his privilege as the one who'd been blessed to love her. He'd found her fast asleep in the back of his car, and the vampire king had driven in silent circles, searching for an answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. The answer had been love. The answer had always been love, and that answer would carry him forward through all the long years to come until the stars themselves burned out and his own story finally came to an end. Whenever that might be, he would face it knowing he'd lived well, loved deeply, and honored the gift of the remarkable woman who'd stumbled into his life and changed everything. That was enough, more than enough. That was everything.